Welcome, everyone. We're so glad to have you here. This is the last in our series of Mind, Body, Spirit, Consciousness 101 series. And Dr. Jonathan Locust is going to integration, kind of wrap it all up for us. But let me first just give a little introduction. I know we all feel like we know him, but this is going to be there might be a few things here that you learn about him that you didn't know. So Dr. Jonathan Locust Jr. is a speaker, researcher, and strategist specializing in equality-centered analytics, organizational strategy, and conscious leadership. He holds a PhD in theory and social foundations with a concentration in research and measurement from the University of Toledo and is a certified Six Sigma Black Belt. I love that. I always wanted to get that certification. And if those who don't know it, it's like in that is in like making sure processes are within Six Sigma, so tight that there's hardly anything can go wrong in a process. I think it's so amazing. So and what a neat name, right? Six Sigma. Mm-hmm. As the founder of the Lotus Group, he leads predictive research initiatives that model consumer behavior and decision-making across sectors from jury strategy to user experience design. After navigating a personal health crisis that exposed vulnerabilities within the wellness industry, he founded ConsciRise, a trusted platform and community designed to protect seekers and elevate ethical, holistic practitioners. With more than a decade of executive leadership experience in higher education, including service as a chief diversity officer, Dr. Locust bridges science, strategy, and spirituality to build systems rooted in trust, integrity, and measurable transformation. So I think anyone who has the goal of being able to measure consciousness, I'm all for him. I know y'all have all like him. And with no further ado, I will pass it over to Dr. Jonathan and let him kind of wrap up all we've been learning the last several weeks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rhonda. I appreciate everybody for being here, especially and everybody who's been coming through the session and the presenters. It's been phenomenal. I know I learned a lot consistently on all the sessions. Can everybody see my screen okay? Perfect. So we'll go ahead and get started. So I think it's probably the best that since we had a session about time, is talking about how I spend my time. The first is with my family. I'm married with two kids, Jonathan and Jade. They'll be turning 11 and 5 this year. Then with professional volunteering. So I'm on the board of an organization called Blacks in Technology in Tampa, as well as the Dakota Foundation, which is an educational foundation that has a servant leadership museum based in Chicago, Illinois. So do some pretty cool stuff. And then my research interests, as Rhonda mentioned, I'm interested in consciousness, spirituality. A lot of this actually started with, if you can recall, when Dr. McKnight, he did a session on AI and consciousness. I was his intern my sophomore year in college, and he started teaching me political predictions and all of these different things you could do to predict human behavior on specific actions they were going to take. So I've always been like fascinated, even as a young age, and that's really expanded into ways and learning about how different cultures expanded their levels of consciousness, and wanting to measure that and see how those things could be able to work or help me out as I try to figure out who I am and why I'm here. And other things that I like to do, I like to read, I like to work out. I'm really interested in crystals. I've been playing pickleball lately, so I've been getting pretty good at that. Eating, I like eating, grilling, and trees. I like, since we moved to Florida, we've become a lot more. And now because we have the space, we got a few trees in the back. We just lost our mango tree, so I'm a little sad about that. We'll have to replace our mango tree. It ended up, because of the cold weather, not making it. But that's just a little bit about me. So kind of when we look at what we've explored together over the last 6 weeks, this culminating into our 7th week. Amanda came and talked about time. Then we had Dr. Martin talking about awareness. Then we had Jonathan come in and speak to us about how we actually can heal the body through routine and Ayurvedic yoga perspectives. We had Todd come and talk about movement, sound, and senses. Cindy discussed with us how our story can lead to us knowing more about ourselves to get to more of the spiritual understanding that we're here for. We had Dr. Suber that was here that talked to us about our intuition and inner beliefs. And now we're going to be talking about like integration, how we grow and how we heal. So I want to be able to ask them, kind of just open up what session over the last 6 weeks, what session either resonated or impacted you the most, and why. So I'll just open it up. You can either start speaking, raise your hand, whichever one. Go ahead. Yeah, Mark. And if you want to unmute, please.
You hear me now?
Perfect. Yes, sir.
Okay. Actually, a couple of them, but the one that really stuck out to me and I really apply to daily life is he said that 10-second delay from your heart to your thought. I always thought it was the other way around. But when you really think about it, is like, you really just sit back, think about the situation instead of reacting off. You're more likely less to have yeah. That right there, man, when he said that every day at work or either here, if just like back and just think of deep to me. Really changed a lot.
And Mark, I'm gonna have you maybe just repeat that last sentence, and just maybe come a little bit closer because we could hear you, but it was going out a little bit. So if you can maybe repeat that last sentence for me, if you don't mind, sir.
Well, I don't know if this was it, but I was just saying that like the delay, and I basically put it into like everyday life. That I'm here at home with my wife or at work, you know what I'm saying? Instead of just reacting, you got to just take a step back and really think about a situation.
Perfect, perfect. We're able to hear you perfect. Thank you. And I think that was that Dr. Martin's session that talked about the connection between the heart and the mind and taking that delay. So I believe that was Dr. Martin's session on awareness.
Yeah, really like that.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I liked, I mean, it always resonates with me. If you talk about sound, and movement, because you think about meditation, there's light, there's sound, there's vibration, those kinds of things. So I think Todd, I think that presentation was really good, and I think Cindy resonated pretty well too because she really kind of opened up, and in terms of what you feel inside, in terms of how it resonates and what that can translate to, from the internal to the external. So I thought those both, really stuck with me pretty well.
Perfect. Yeah, I would say the answer to the question, Bashar, Dr. Supers, I like yours because it took kind of that perspective of intuition and giving a process for it of connecting to your higher self. And that was very useful. Same thing, agree with Cindy's of, a lot of the things that can be helpful with moving forward you could have already experienced it. And I know I've spent time just thinking about the experiences that I had of how I got here and kind of reverse engineering those to say, okay, this has been helpful. So that was really great, Cindy. And then same with Todd, and then of course with Amanda. I always, whenever I think about time, I always think about Amanda. If I'm on my phone too long, well, am I past my 20-minute, then 10-minute break? So that's always useful and helpful. So thank you, everybody. For sharing. So what is integration? And so the way we're looking at integration is when you have connection across multiple dimensions. And when we're talking about that, we're bringing in those tools, those insights, those inner truths from all across our journey. And one of the things, as I mentioned with Cindy talked about how our story is the pathway to spirit, right? So then there's experiences that we had with some contemplation and some meditation that can help us disclose things that we could have missed. So when we're integrating, we're bringing multiple parts of ourselves together and we're utilizing those tools. There's been tools that each practitioner has shared throughout the beginning of this presentation, whether it's specific tools on how to manage your time, on new ways to think about the connection or anatomy and physiology that Mark mentioned between the head and the heart. All of these different specific tools that we can use. Well, how do we, for one, figure out which ones are those that resonate with us, and then integrating those into our daily lives so they actually do become habits. I remember and I remember Mark, when you first listened to Amanda's presentation, you were sending me videos of consistently working out,
Mhm.
consistently juicing to the point to where
Yeah.
it's a habit. And when people were seeing you a
Mhm.
few weeks ago, they was like, he done lost some weight.
Yeah.
So being able to have like those real instances of integration to be able to say, okay, this is something that I could be able to use to add value to my life or add value to the people around me. So we're taking in those tools, those insights again. We spent time last week talking about intuition. Jonathan talked about listening to the messages from our body, and then wrapping that up with community. And that community could be in community like this, and we'll also talk about how to be in community with yourself once we're talking about the integration between the unconscious self and the conscious self. So when we look at integration, we're looking at the culmination of intention, action, intuition, and then embodiment. And as we bring all of those together, we have a system of integration that is sustainable. Something that is not only sustainable, but it puts us on a trajectory of reaching those higher levels of consciousness that we're looking to seek. So these are just some of the, I know we went through and talked about some of the insights that I gained, and these are some of the ones that I gained from each of the sessions. And the first one, I know Amanda talked about time, and it was not only talking about time in regards to how you manage your time, but what I kind of got from that was an invitation to reclaim your time. And basically, it's okay to tell people no. You know, you don't got to always tell people yes, especially if it's something that could be impacting your time in a way that may not be conducive to you or what your spiritual or your conscious goals are. So I really took that as a way that it's okay to tell people no. It is okay to tell people no, especially if it's doing something um, that is not necessarily in the rhythm of the life that you're trying to create. And then Jonathan talks about the science of routine. So one thing I really picked up even now was just drinking warm water. Instead of drinking green tea, which I mentioned when I go to the dentist, they complain about my teeth being a little colored when I'm getting my cleaning. So that's something I don't have to worry about now with being able to still feel that warmth in the morning like a tea. So I've been drinking consistently warm water and not even drinking ice water. So we did before, right before this, we did like a 8 mile bike ride as a family. I came back, I didn't put any ice in my water. I just drank my room temperature water, trying to keeping that flow of what's already happening with the body. And then Dr. Martin came and talked about how can we train our mind to be able to see that attention and awareness really can be our superpower. And that really resonated. We talked about Ty. Ty came in and I always connected the movement and the vibration and the sound, reminding us that everything we're doing, our thoughts and our actions they're all vibrations. And it's good to just kind of just come back and remember that. Cindy, uh, your life is the text. And especially as Cindy, who's wrote multiple books, that is true. So knowing that, being able to look back on our lives to again know that the history of our lived experiences could be a gateway to further understanding. And then Dr. Schubert came in of how we can procedurally tap into our intuition, our higher consciousness. And again, that also resonated with me. So when we talk about our experiences, right? Either we're spending those experiences with ourselves or we're spending them with other people. So I'll ask, as we have had either time alone or time together, do you all feel like there's a balance? Do you feel like you maybe need a little bit more alone time, a little bit more community time? So I'll open that up to the community. How do you think it is when you spend your time? Do you think you have enough alone time? Do you need more? Is it more community time? So I'll open that up.
Over
Yeah.
the, oh,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, over the time, like since all this has started, I've very much regarded my, time when I need to reflect in my space. So yeah, I'm definitely have increased that. Back in the day, I would give away a lot of my time to other people and, not focus on what I needed to do. But I've definitely integrated the fact that yep, I need to chill for a little bit. I need to meditate. So, and it's nice because people respect that. And yeah, the more that you take care of yourself too, then the more that it's going to reflect on the outside and affect others, respectively too. So I think that's a good thing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cindy.
Yes, and yeah, I feel I have probably more alone time than I probably need. Uh, I feel like it can be a little dangerous sometimes, just being alone too much. You know, you start overanalyzing things, and I think that's a problem that I have to a certain degree. And the fact that I probably need some people around me so I could communicate more, bounce ideas off of, learn how to control some of these thoughts and feelings that you know happen, from time to time. Um, so I believe that that's probably more what I need.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else want to add in anything?
I'll add. I was going to say that, I love the question about balance, right? Because balance is a lot of, I focus a lot of time on balance, and I actually get a lot of nice alone time because I have a really long commute. So I'm in by myself for, at least 2 hours a day. And I feel like I balance that, and I use that time like so I use it a lot for deep reflection and a lot of inner work. And so outside of my work, my day job and that commute, that's I feel like why I spend so much time in other communities because I want to create that balance because I feel like I have a lot of alone time and so I want to have a lot of community time. And so I'm in a few different communities, and to be able to have that really, really nice balance between the two, to me, it makes me feel like there's so much growth and momentum that can happen because I'm doing a lot of deep work in that alone time, and then being able to then share that with the communities that I'm a part of.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I think too, I'm piggybacking on what Amanda just said. I think it's the balance. And I think like in this group is really good for me because I get so many different perspectives and that helps with personal growth, learning from others. But by the same token, in terms of the inner work, I do think you need, which I have, you need silence and you need stillness. As the other gentleman spoke, if you are self-analyzing and self-reflecting, or sometimes it ain't that deep, and you try to make it that deep, then in my opinion, in my experience also, you're thinking too much. I think that the key is when you're going inward, what you're actually trying to do is learn not to think. If that makes any sense. If you're getting into meditation, you're actually, the mind is cluttered. And when you're going inward, you're actually trying to get past the mind to go to a deeper state, if you will, which comes back to what we kind of talked about last week with that higher self and all of that. So I think the inner work is good if you're focusing, really going inward and learning not to think, to really grow from the stillness and believe the stillness does have something to offer. But I think you have to have good balance.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anybody else want to add? Okay. Perfect. So yes, so as mentioned, as others have said, that balance is key, because when we have that balance, it allows us to be able to grow parallel in different ways, right? In solitude, and with, as Amanda mentioned, being able to use those tools that we are learning and growing from, with that alone time, being able to use those with our community. Um, so one of the things that has been really helpful, for me, that I'll kind of talk about is, um, a model for inner communication. If you're familiar with, and I know this is Cindy's person, Carl Jung, but if you're familiar with any of Carl Jung's work, he talks about, dream interpretation and active imagination. And and they go into a lot of very detail, but they really talk about how our dreams are not only messages from the unconscious, but it allows you to essentially have an inner GPS system, right? And to be able to understand what yourself is thinking. And through that interpreting of the dreams on a consistent basis, it allows to have an active dialogue with your conscious self and your unconscious self. So I'll go over the three steps to this real quick. And if anybody has additional questions, I'm more than happy to send photocopies of the book. All this comes from a book called Inner Work. And they go into detail, dream interpretation, and active imagination. So the first part is association. So whenever you have a dream, you want to be able to understand what the associations are. And those associations they talk about are the people, the objects, the situations, the colors, sound, speech, anything to you that actually stands out. Those are associations. So you want to start by writing all those things down, because one thing you learn in dream interpretation is dreams are not necessarily literal. So you can have a dream about having a car accident and it not be about you having a car accident, right? So these dreams aren't necessarily literal. And once you go through this process, you really start to see the things that comes from your dreams. The next step is something called dynamics. So each of these dream associations, you will go through and kind of see what immediately comes to mind. So and let's say if blue was a color that was in your dream, well, what emotions come around with the color blue? So you kind of just write all of those different things down. Then you go through a process of which they call the click it method. Is just going through and just see which one of those actually resonate with you. Then you get to the dynamics and you're connecting each of those dream images to something that is specifically happening in your life. So if you have the color blue, and blue for you is about water or deepness or things like that, well, you would see then where have those elements or those dynamics showed up in your time. You will write about that. And then after you have all of this information, which it can be pages and pages of information, so this process is not something that always is quick. It can actually take time, and or you can do all of this, and it could be a dream that's maybe foretelling. So it may be something where you're not supposed to necessarily have an immediate answer, but you go through this process and you start to really be able to understand the messaging of the dream as you start to be able to interpret and see how the dynamics of the dream are interplaying with the things that are currently happening in your life. Any questions about that? All right, perfect. Another part is active imagination. And active imagination is a conscious dialogue with your unconscious. And there's essentially three steps that they talk about with this process. And of course, they talk about, just like with any inner work and meditation, being somewhere quiet. But one of the things that is different about this is whenever you're entering um, kind of this space of active imagination, you want to be able to have a symbol or something that either you're putting on or taking off. So I have a bracelet that I put on when I enter into active imagination, and that actually putting on the bracelet is a signal to my unconscious self that I'm getting ready to go into dialogue. And then once I finish that, once the session is over, I'm going to take that off to also signify that the conversation is over. So the first is the invitation is quieting the mind. For me, what I do is I will go into a space to where I kind of tell my unconscious, I'm going to be having a conversation with you. I visualize leaving the house, and then I go to a space, there's water nearby. So I go to a space, sit down on the bench visually, and then I open the door. And then on the other side of that door, as I go through some Star Wars type things where lights are flying past me, I then open that door and I'm on the other side of that active imagination. And I can tell you, if once you start to take this seriously, not only are things happening, but they do talk, they do speak, and when you ask questions, they do answer. So the first one is invitation. The second one is dialogue, engaging with the images is real. So if you're, let's say, like either walking or in your active imagination, you'll come across things, items, people that you can converse with in order to be able to see how they're responding, what it is that you're seeking to understand in that case. And then lastly, it's the integration piece. As you're doing it, you're either writing it down or you're typing it on the computer, whichever one. That way you have a transcript. And then similarly with dream interpretation, you're sitting back and seeing what was some of the insights that came from that, and then how can you actually integrate it. And integrated could be actually doing something physical. So there's an example to where in the book there's a woman who has a dream about a place that she meditated that was around the corner from her. Well, one of her things of integration was she was going to go and actually find a place, and she didn't actually know that the actual place in her dream, which was like a smaller, more open-minded church congregation, was around the corner. So she got out the car, asked if she could stop in and meditate, and that ended up being a place that she was actually able to physically meditate, mirroring her dream image that she got, and that was a part of integration by that. So it gives a part that once you do these things, you notify to the unconscious self that you have received the message, you understand, and you want to continue with that dialogue. So when we talk about spending time with others, this is a way that you can spend time with yourself by getting to know yourself and to be able to have an active dialogue between your conscious self and unconscious self. So I'll ask before we get ready. Yeah, Rhonda.
Just here, I see that section there says, "Do not drift into fantasy." How do you know when you're drifting into fantasy versus actually being? What is the key signs for you that you're in the right state?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So one of the things that they talk about in the book is if there's like a specific, let's say, image that comes to mind. So if you're talking to a being or a person, you may notice something that walks past or things like that could just be random. But being able to engage with and be focused in there with the being that you're talking to or that person that you're talking to until you feel that message is done, and then being able to direct your attention to something else, because it's all fantasy since it's in your unconscious anyway, but at least allowing for the message to be received with the being or person that you're interacting with until moving on to something else.
Okay. Thank you.
So
Yeah, Bashar, yep.
just to follow, okay, so now this is the mystic, Burchard, okay? And the question is, you say fantasy, but and I've never read this particular book, but I've done dreams and dreams analysis to other sources. So what this describes is, okay, so you're doing this, your methodology approach to connect with the higher self. So it's kind of you answering you. You're actually getting into that state of consciousness, which is a higher state of consciousness to get information. Now, the question becomes, or through your meditation, or are you, how do you feel about out of the body experiences? How do you feel about soul travel? How do you feel about the astral, the mental, the causal planes, and so forth, or the five, planes, and you get to the higher realms, the spiritual planes, that kind of thing. So there are schools of thought that you actually leave the body. You actually go somewhere else, and that experience is real, okay, in another dimension, so to speak, or in a different level. There's a school of thought that talks about, for example, if you want to talk to an ancestor, if you want to talk to a famous person, you can actually do that and make those connections on other planes of existence. Now, modern science may call that fantasy, but there are mystics that say that you can actually do that. So on Rhonda's point, which I think was a great question, how do you know it's fantasy? Okay, because I've done a little bit of both, and there's times where I know I wasn't here. And I'm saying I know I went somewhere, and I've talked to other people that have had those experiences. So any kind of feedback or any kind of thought on that?
Yeah. So I think it is interesting. I know, like I know we talked about this when it comes to like what I've learned in regards to the kind of the out of body experiences and things like that. It's been related to um until magic, right? We talked about like I was a part of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So a lot of that was whether it was astral projection or things like that. I think the thing that it would kind of come down to is like the intention of the experience. And I know there would be like, so even for this particular for active imagination, I'm doing lead ups that are preparing for active imagination. When we were doing like, you would practice astral projection or, mirroring and things like that, you would do certain preparations to astral project and things like that. So I think that the intention of the activity kind of is part of it too. Now, what does get interesting is when you're talking about it is, as you continue to do these practices, how deeper and deeper in your consciousness are you going? And kind of when you talk about those different levels, because I'll give an example. Like in my active imaginations, they started on the surface, but now I'm doing things that are in space in my active imaginations. So I wonder as I'm doing those things, and I'm actually like traveling to those spaces, even though it's an active imagination. Um, am I there? So I see what you're saying, where it does really start to get interesting. But you're right. When you're having all these internal conversations with yourself. But I would say that the thing that I've really gotten the most out of it is the the active imagination for me provides, I would say, um, a mechanism that I feel is more of a safer way to experience these things in an environment um, that is a little bit, for me, just a little bit more energetically and spiritually safe. But great question. Any other questions? And yeah, Mark, to your question, yes, the book is called Inner Work, and I can share once I finish. I can look up and share um, the exact link to the book. But yeah, that's the name of the book, Inner Work. Perfect. Perfect. Thanks, Rhonda. We'll appreciate it. So yeah, so going to pattern recognition and the self. So um, we see that our lives and things that happen, they'll happen in patterns, especially if you start to observe and see things. You can start to see patterns that maybe ourself is trying to reveal to us that we're missing. So being able to see what are patterns that are shown, what are core themes that are repeating in our lives, and letting those patterns be a pathway to understand things that yourself, your higher self, your unconscious self are trying to communicate with you. So those are things that do become important. And I look at um, integration as kind of a space where, as you're doing it, as you're continuous, it's almost like a way that you're getting to know yourself more and more and more and more. And Rhonda mentioned like my background and love of like process improvement and removing inefficiencies. And in statistics and math, there's something called a continuous improvement model. And on a continuous improvement model, you're actually learning more and more and more things, to where you're actually becoming, what I would feel, even on maybe it was more spiritual term, you're becoming more and more refined, to where the errors and the problems literally become zero. But it's a process to where there's multiple iterations, to where you learn and grow, you learn and grow, you learn and grow, till it's continuously growing. So growth, as we know, we always talk about cycles, things being cyclical. I know that's something that has came up multiple times in our presentation. So we know growth is cyclical. It does happen in phases, and integration is not at all a final destination, because as Bashar has shared different school of thoughts, there's multiple school of thoughts that talks about how our consciousness, we continue to grow, and it doesn't stop. And that's kind of the cool thing, is I was always kind of wondering, like, you get to a point where you just be sitting there chilling, right? Where you just grown so much, where you just get to just kind of just relax and chill. And it seems that this method of conscious and spiritual growth is something that is continuous, and something that we get to look forward to, because there's multiple things that we can always learn. And I like it because this in process improvement, you learn about something called a DMAIC model, where you design, measure, assess, improve, and control. And you do that continuously until you are refining the process and removing inefficiencies or things that you no longer need. And each cycle, each time you do it, each iteration is uncovering new patterns, and new insights that maybe you have missed before or missed previously, and really turning that disharmony into harmony. So as we look at some questions about how we can start to integrate, what are things that we can do to start integrating now? Here's a few kind of reflective questions. What part of my journey have I honored the least but need the most? How can I carry what I've learned into conflict, silence, or stress? What tool am I ready to use more consistently? Where do I need community? And where do I need more quiet time to find that balance? So as we end, we're going to end with a few questions, and feel free to answer all or one. But what are you still resisting, either gently or quietly? What daily practices have you utilized that have helped you remember your wholeness? Remember that we are connected to something bigger than ourselves. What tool am I ready to use more consistently? And who is it, or what is it that helps you come back to your original truth? So we'll just open it up to answer any of those questions that you prefer, and then we'll be finishing up. Yes, Cindy, please.
I do have to leave because I got to pick my kid up in a couple minutes, but I want to make a point, with integration and moving along with the dreams, interpretations. What's really cool is throughout my journey, I've had like I used to have dreams where it was always my grandma's house, and like I would discover new rooms that I didn't know, but they were like in the beginning like tunnels and like really dark and dreary, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know there was any of this down here, like in her basement. But then as like the years went by, like I would find different rooms that I could go into. And like I'm like, I didn't know I knew this room. And then I would find more passageways. It's like, but as it keeps going, like it's less scary and less dark and less, shadowy. So like I know that I'm integrating, and even like a couple weeks ago I had this dream that, or two dreams, and like that again I was finding these, wide open spaces that I'm like, I didn't know what this is, but and there might be like a little cobwebs or whatever, but it goes back to what Burchard is saying. We have to detach from things that are bringing us down and preventing us from moving forward. So it's like you're decluttering, and I know that's like symbolic of me decluttering my subconscious mind. So I think it's really cool, and I'm a big fan of that. Um, but I mean, just as far as daily practices to remember your wholeness, like that's the one I'm gonna quick touch base with. Just reflection is what I always like to, just go into a meditative state. And like you said, you can go into those states and you set an intention, and a lot of times that will come forward. So I'm a big fan of all that stuff. So, but I do have to leave, so I just want to say thank you for everything. So
Absolutely perfect, Cindy. Thanks for
all right.
joining us.
Yeah, bye.
Anybody else want to tackle the question before we get ready to head out?
I
Yeah.
actually wanted to just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, ma'am.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I was just going to follow up with what Cindy just said around sort of the dreams, because for a while there, and I can't remember exactly when it was, it might have been when I was sort of first starting my sort of personal development journey, I would have dreams where I would get into an elevator and it would shoot off somewhere and completely shift the dream into something completely different. And so for a while there, I was conscious of not wanting to step into elevators in dreams because it was going to take me off to somewhere I didn't know I was going to go. It was going to take me out of that dream into somewhere else. And so I don't have those dreams anymore, but as I reflect back on maybe why I was having those dreams at that period of time, it was because I was going through so much growth and transformation that I was sort of my the work that I was doing was just ascending me so quickly that I maybe I had a subconscious fear about that happening so quickly. So I just wanted to share that. But I think for me, the daily practice that helps me remember my wholeness. It is my daily meditation. I do a brief meditation every morning just to ground myself. And I've been doing that probably for a couple months now. I hadn't been really consistent. It was one of the things that I've been trying to do is get really consistent with meditation. And so that now is sort of has been my daily practice, and I've really been enjoying that.
Perfect. Thank you, Amanda. And thanks for sharing the example of the dream, because when people, I think, hear those examples, it helps, for it to come to life. So thank you for sharing that. Go ahead, Mike. I know you had something that you want to mention, sir.
Yes, sir. So I got a couple answers for you. So as far as which tools I am prepared to put into use for this next stage in my existence is everyone that I can get my hands on, every bit of information and knowledge that I accumulate, that I learn from my peers, and just out through experience, I am willing to understand and put them into practice, because it's not just about bettering myself, it's about being a better servant and being the example instead of trying to explain what the example is, to be the visual, you know, be the visualization in the flesh for others to see what it means and what comes along with it. Because I've been going through this for about 3-4 years, and every time I obtain some information and understanding of it, I take it wholeheartedly and I do everything I can to put it into practice. So that's what I want to continue to do. I just want to continue to to learn all the different practices and different ways of hitting that next level. And and also as far as what daily practices I do to help keep me level is that's my workout, that's my training. Uh, there's a lot of things that attach to me throughout the years, and I work real hard every day to make sure I kill them and make sure that they have no control over me before I introduce myself back out to the world. So those are my answers.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Your first one, what are you still resisting, gently, quietly? And I think that, for me anyway, um, sometimes you get into a comfort zone or you get typecast. You know, you typecast yourself, like this is who I am, this is what I do. And then you learn other things and you learn that you can do other things as well. So the resisting comes in where, when do you transition? When do you realize, just because this is my comfort zone, just because I do this well, maybe there's a time to let it go and then evolve and allow yourself to evolve into something else. Sometimes we want, um, you pointed it out when you were talking about controlling your experiences, whether it's dreams and how far you go and how well you get there. Amanda talked about being in that elevator and not knowing where it's going to take her, and that was kind of a spooky moment. And sometimes it's good not to get in that elevator, but other times, when you go where you don't know you're going, it takes you into a whole new realm of experience and growth. And so, I mean, my typecasting, which the group knows, is law enforcement. But I've done so much in this area, I'm kind of transitioning, but I still, it's like my safety net. I still go back to, to that law enforcement thing. I mean, that's there. And at this point, is there a time to like let it go? Is there a time? And that could be a spiritual experience too. That could be, I went through that with Christianity. There was a time where I realized I had to let it go. And that was hard to do. So I think sometimes you have to take a look at yourself. And when you're doing that self-reflection, self-evaluation, self-actualization, growth, whatever you want to call it, you know, what am I resisting? And sometimes you find out you're resisting transition, and sometimes you're resisting growth, and maybe you need to kindly, gently let it go. So that's kind of that's what it made me think about.
Great response. Great response. I know I took a lot from that. So thank you. Anybody else want to add anything before we get ready to head out? All right. Well, thank you.
Hey, thank you. Thank you all.
Definitely.
Well, appreciate it. Have a good, and then we'll have the series happening again within the next few months or so. But we appreciate everybody joining us over the course of the series. They'll be up on. We already have like half of them up on YouTube. The other ones will be going up soon. So check us out if you haven't subscribed on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel. But again, thank you all so much for being here. We hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care.